Convergent colleagues, welcome. Good afternoon, good morning, depending where you are in the world. Listen, I'm going to start this week with some really sad and difficult news. We've all seen people impacted by the coronavirus around the world, and we've had colleagues that have been impacted, and thankfully, the vast majority have recovered. Very sadly, right now, one of our own, a gentleman named Jim Willis, who's a specialist in Houston, is fighting for his life. He's come down with coronavirus. It's been almost 2 weeks now. He's been in the hospital in intensive care for the vast majority of that time. And over the past 10 to plus days, he's actually been not only on a ventilator, but evidently all the tools that they can do to keep him alive. And his family, it's a very difficult situation, as you can imagine. And he's been a colleague for almost 5 years for us, and a little over 5 years for us down in Houston. And it's just tragic news that I felt compelled to want to share with you. And his family is comfortable, obviously, with us sharing this information. You know, at times like this, we all want to feel compelled and want to do something. And I think for those of you that feel compelled and comfortable with praying, certainly pray. For those of you who can think of him, it's amazing the power and the feeling that can come through, and having our entire organization rooting for someone and knowing that someone is rooting you on would be, I think, incredibly powerful. And but I am, based on the news, it is really a difficult situation, and I would tell you that everything we've heard about how this disease can really attack virtually every part of your body, it's being fought in every one of Jim's organs, and we'll be all most hopeful for a good outcome from this, but it is very difficult right now. And again, wanted to share that with you. It really brings home why we've had to do and what we have done as an organization and as a world to try to battle this disease. And when you see someone as close to us in our organization battle through this as he has, and we know of others that, while not colleagues, family members that have battled the disease. My own daughter had the coronavirus back in early March, and I saw how she battled through it, and it was a heck of a battle. Thankfully, she's recovered fully and worked through it. But for 12 days, she was literally in a situation that she never had a temperature. I mean, you could see that it was as good of a flu type symptoms as anyone I've ever seen have. So, keep that in mind as we all come back into society, come back to work, come out of our homes. For those who've been going forward, and everything that's going on, as we think about that relative to wearing masks, continuing to wash your hands, staying socially distanced, but at the same time not being afraid, but coming into society. And I know that's a really hard message, right? Because we're all sitting here and obviously thinking about Jim, but at the same time we're all realizing that society has to go forward here. And how do you do that? And I think, as I say, you do it by being as reasonably safe as we all can be thoughtful about how we approach this. And quite frankly, for those who are noticing, there's not some trees behind me. There's actually a wall and a map, and that's because earlier this week I made the move from Boston back to Chicago, and am actually sitting in the CDC today. There's about 6 or 7 of us here today. We're beginning to slowly repopulate, and there's no timeline to do this. There's no set schedule to do this. We're going to do it on a CDC basis and a CTC basis, based on the right approach and the right feel for things. And clearly what we've all learned through this situation and this crisis is that we can operate differently, and that we can think about how we work in the future a little bit differently. I was just talking to Alan Bergschneider, our CFO, and in the past we would be always bursting at the seams at the CDC, trying to figure out how to eke out a few more desks, a few more spaces. And the reality is at least for a while now, we're going to think differently about that. How do people work from home in different situations? And there is inherent productivity that sometimes can be gained from that. But I can also tell you that earlier this week, a few of us sat socially distant around a conference table here at the CDC. And what a great opportunity that was, just to be able to reconnect and have the flow of a discussion that wasn't simply over a computer. And I think we all yearn for that. So the world's changing, the world is evolving. We're going to change and evolve as an organization and how we come back to work, how we repopulate, how we do it as safely as we possibly can. But we do need to move forward. But we need to move forward while being as safe as we can, and certainly keeping Jim and anyone that is impacted by this in our mind and in our thoughts and prayers as we go forward here. So sorry to have to share that difficult news, and I will I know we will all hope to be able to report good news next week that Jim has been through the worst of it and is improving. But it is as scary of a prognosis that I've heard directly through all of this. Last week we talked about everything that went on with George Floyd, and I do appreciate, I always get messages from colleagues, and I will tell you that I received as many responses from you as I've ever received about any message. And I think it really speaks to how we as an organization are thinking about this, are living it. We have colleagues that have been literally in harm's ways, working to support our customers in some of the areas where some of the protests and some of the riots were, unfortunately. And we all recognize that, we're a security company, right? We don't want to see destruction happen. We don't want to see people put at risk. But I think as humans too, we also see that, as we talked last week, how important it is for we as a world to evolve, how we as a company to evolve from a diversity and inclusion standpoints. And we've already begun to have some meetings. We are beginning to put an outline together of some of the things that we want to do, but we want to make these things and actions that we're going to take really tangible, and not just an announcement from the CEO or a message on a bulletin board or on a website. Those are important. There's no doubt about it, but it's the tangible actions that we can take. And we realize that, this isn't something you flip a switch and check a box and we'll be done, but it's the continuing evolution of our organization and the growth of our organization. We're going to drive through these. So very excited about that. This is the month, June is Pride Month. Speaking of inclusion, right? And how do we think about that and make our organization, again, feel as inclusive as possible to all of our colleagues? And, in this month here, the month of June, Pride Month, for our LGBTQ plus colleagues, and making sure they all feel as comfortable and as included here in our organization as anywhere in the world. And that's what this is all about, right? I mean, this is all about an organization that is as inclusive as possible, so we can attract the very best colleagues in the world to our organization, so we can do the very best job for our customers, right? And that's what's interesting. That's what I saw, the responses from colleagues and across that responded back to me, searching for that, wanting that, recognizing that as great as Convergint is, and we can still be better. And imagine if we can drive that inclusiveness through our organization. And, what I'm thankful is that, again, to the colleague that last fall wrote the email to kind of begin to really, highlight where we are from a Convergent culture, V's and B's, Caddyshack moment, and to help us evolve through this, that we've already begun the steps, and we're not just simply responding to this latest tragic incident, but that we've been building momentum to this. So continue to expect more from all of us. And I think you'll be comfortable with the initial steps and where we're going to take this, but most importantly, the long-term commitment to, changing and evolving as an organization. So the other thing that I wanted to touch a base on is tomorrow, it was supposed to be June 12th, obviously, Convergent Social Responsibility Day. And, sadly, we're not able to do that, especially because Chicago is going to be a beautiful day, which we don't always get for Convergent Social Responsibility Day. I think it's going to be in the 70s and sunny here. So, but what we have committed to, and I wanted to re-message this to you all, because I know there have been some questions. Are we going to have a specific Convergent Social Responsibility Day? And the answer is, after talking to the RVPs and the GMs, it's going to be difficult to do that. And what we are going to do is have Convergent Day later this summer or early in the fall. It's going to be CTC specific, based on the schedules and the needs of the local requirements of the business and the communities that we work in. As we all know, schools have been incredibly disrupted, and we do an awful lot with schools around Social Responsibility Day. You're all familiar with the Step Up program. We want to make sure that we can continue to support schools. So that means that we were originally thinking early September. The reality is schools are going to be back in, hopefully back in session. There are probably going to be very specific requirements from social distancing. So that might mean in some locations, we're going to try and get into schools earlier and do Social Responsibility Day as appropriate, or it might mean that we have to pivot and go to different locations. And certainly, given the recent challenges in the cities that we support, and many of the cities we support, finding new ways and to get back to the communities that are least represented or least fortunate, I think will be a great opportunity for us to bring the resources to bear. So certainly want to say that yes, Convergent Social Responsibility Day is going to happen. Yes, expect it. We're going to have to do it again differently, right? Instead of maybe 100 or so colleagues come together in one location and all being together, we might have to have smaller groups, right? That can be properly, socially distant and work through this. But I think as we go forward and as the society learns, we're going to see a lot of continued learnings. Let's face it, what we knew about the coronavirus in early March and late February versus what we know now, the fact that back then don't wear a mask, now it's wear a mask. I mean, we've seen that there have been, a lot of learnings that, continue, and I'm sure we'll continue through the summer on how to best approach this and manage it. But that will allow us to importantly come together as a team as best we can and give back to the communities that we all live in and support. I think it's now more important than ever that we go about and do that. So continue to ask questions. We'll continue to work with the CTCs to support this, but absolutely incredibly, it's always been important. And I think every bit as important now as it has always been. It's interesting in that we don't spend a huge amount of time talking about financial results because, quite frankly, when we talk about our culture, which allows us to recruit and retain the great colleagues that we have, and those colleagues can go and do a great job for our customer and try to be our customer's very best service provider. That model has driven the growth for the company for as long as it has. And, when we first entered the crisis, and it started, as you know, in late January in China, but landed here in the US in early March, we didn't know exactly where everything was going to evolve and grow to from a company standpoint. We didn't know if the lights were going to get shut out and we weren't shut down and we weren't going to be able to come back to work. And in reality, looking back over the past couple of months, we had to take a number of very difficult actions, and you all lived them. I'm not going to sit here and recount what we did, but we felt that they were the right things to do through that period to make sure that the company controlled its destiny and we could control our destiny going forward. And because we took those difficult actions, and they were difficult, and we've talked about those on prior calls, it allowed us to do exactly what we hoped. And the team responded in ways, quite frankly, that none of us could have ever even expected. The focus that the colleagues have brought to supporting our customers and working through difficult situations and finding ways to stay safe has allowed us to keep the vast majority of our colleagues busy through this period. When we looked from a financial standpoint, we assumed that customers were going to be slow paying us, that we weren't going to be able to generate the cash that we would need to keep payrolls at a good place, to keep the proper amount of money in the bank. And we had taken a number of steps to firewall us from that, to make sure that we did have enough money in the bank. We drew down our revolver I talked to you about and put additional cash into the bank to make sure that we had that proper cash. What the team has done on the cash standpoint is beyond belief. We've actually, as a business, generated a significant amount of cash through that period. And how did we do that? We did it by a team, you and the CTCs, working to shorten the amount of days between when we invoice and when we collect that cash. Houston, for the first time ever this month, finished with a DSO measurement of 29 days. That is unbelievable to me. In the short time I've been here, short time, 7 years almost that I've been here, they've historically been 50, 60, 70 plus days. And it's always been a challenge. And here we are in Houston, as you know, our big focus there is in the oil industry, the petrochemical industry, but the team there bringing focus and action to that actually shrunk the DSOs down. And by doing that, right, what that has done is, customers have committed to pay us, and getting paid in those terms means that the cash is sitting in our bank account as opposed to our customer's bank account. And that has given us great flexibility to manage through this and maintain the business in a strong position as we have. 2 weeks ago, we actually paid the revolver back, so that's not sitting in our bank account anymore because we're sufficiently funded to run the business through this period. But it's been the actions of the sales team, of the operations team, of the CTC leadership, all coming together and working with the CDC, Henry's team, and making sure that we understand, where things stand with customers, working with our customers where appropriate, and working to shrink those days down. And that has allowed us to free up a tremendous amount of cash that has been critical to our business. And that's critical to how we run this business forward. And again, give us confidence. When we look at the revenue for the year, the last 2 months they've come backwards a little bit, April and May, but nowhere near the extent that we thought. And actually through the month of May, totally, if we look at May of 2020 versus the results of January to May of 2019, we're actually up year over year, about 2%. Now, we were up more significantly through the first quarter, so it does show you that we've impacted ourselves here in April and May, but nowhere near what we expected, which is tremendous. Again, that goes to the backlog that we have, that goes to all the hard work of the colleagues that have been out there working to keep projects going. And now as we enter June, we think that it will be a pretty incredible accomplishment if we can finish the first half of the year flat from a revenue standpoint. So deliver in the first half of June first half of 2020, what we delivered in the first half of 2019, and basically be able to navigate through a quarter that no one would ever want to have to, kind of game theory out, right? Let me throw a pandemic at you, shut the world down, and oh, by the way, we'll throw a little bit of riots into the things just to make sure that, it makes it a degree of difficulty that much higher. Oh, by the way, let's send everyone home at the same time. If our business can keep the focus, keep the revenue at a point that achieves a flat year over year for the first half versus first half, and oh, by the way, we're going to generate a significant amount of cash through that period, I would have said, holy cow, that's impossible. I would have used a little different word, but, close enough. It's impossible to perceive what the power of an organization when they get focused on something and can drive, and what the results you have driven through May have been spectacular. Let's keep it focused now through June. I do think that's one of the things I worry about a little bit, be honest with you, is that, the adrenaline rush that you get when, we're trying to respond to a crisis, that's wearing off now. We're coming back to work a little bit. People feeling a little bit better. It's summertime out. We need to maintain this focus. And I think if we maintain the focus, and I know you can't maintain that hyper focus, but how do we keep the focus here so that not only do we have what I would say a spectacular first half versus what could have happened, but then take advantage of the incredible backlog that we've continued to build this year and execute in the second half so that, we'll end up growing. And just as Convergint and the phrase you've heard Dan and Greg coin from 2008 and 2009, chose not to participate in the financial crisis of 2008 and 2009, I think we as an organization have a path to, we're going to participate, but certainly nowhere near how many industries have been impacted. And I think that there is still a path for us to grow in 2020. Small though it may be, I think that would be an incredible achievement, and one that we could all look back at and say, we never want to live through 2020 again, but we can be damn proud of what we've all accomplished. So, let me end then by thanking you all for everything you've done to get us to this point. Thank you for, taking a moment to think about Jim Willis and say a prayer for him, and certainly, I hope to be able to share great news with you. It might take a miracle to save him, quite frankly, and maybe 5,000 people praying for him might achieve that, and it's the best we can do. And it's really just a tragic situation, but we'll work through it. We're doing our best to support Jim's family and his mother, and she's been terrific. John Noble has been working with her and doing what we can, but as you can imagine, at this point, prayers will be the best possible thing we can do. So thank you again. I wish everyone a great weekend. Please be safe, and we'll look forward to connecting with you next week. Be well, everyone.